It has been 20 years since the release of Half-Life 2, and this game is like none other. It is in top 3 status, if not number 1. The best, most influential FPS game ever made, at least on the single player side. And I just rolled credits on the game here in 2024. It's insane how good a game this is, how well it has held up. I played it originally 20 years ago, 2004. Back then, it was on my parents' computer, and I remember just fingers crossed. Most games would not work, right? These computers were for email, like they were not buying spec'd out machines or whatever. But I do remember Half-Life 2 took such a long time downloading updates through Steam, like the old green UI Steam, and it was insane. I don't think I got super far. I probably took down the Hunter Chopper and probably got to Black Mesa East, but I don't think I really got past it. Maybe Ravenholm, but it wasn't until 2011 that I played through the game for the first time. It's actually where I met my good friend Epos Fox. I don't even know how we met, but I was messaging him through Steam during that playthrough in 2011, and I was on a Mac Pro. I worked at a TV studio growing up, and back then, most of the workflow was on Final Cut Pro 7, so everybody pretty much was on Macs. I saved up forever. I worked years and years of this summer job to buy a Mac Pro, and I don't even think I had boot camped Windows 7 onto a different drive at the time. I think I was playing it on Mac OS because I believe they had a Mac port for the game. I don't remember. But yeah, it blew my mind. I beat it back then, and I just remember thinking, this is it. This is peak. How do you make a game better than this? The sandbox is superb. The physics unrivaled. The atmosphere. Can we just talk about the atmosphere in Half-Life 2 for a second? The sound design and the world building is still, in 2024, on point. It's so eerie hearing the sounds of City 17, or when you take down a Combine and you hear the radio chatter. And I don't know how they've done it, but they've managed to make a game that outclasses most single-player FPS titles that we've experienced in the last decade, 15 years. The impact Half-Life 2 had on FPS games is, you can't even really quantify it. Everything changed after Half-Life 2. It has such a cool, immersive way that it tells the story. Similar to Halo, you're always in control of Gordon Freeman, but you never actually see cutscenes from another perspective. Everything is shown to you from the standpoint of the character. You're never brought out of that moment into the third person, and as such, when the journey wraps, you really do feel like you've been in this immersive, cohesive story. And Half-Life 1 really pioneered that. If you have never played Half-Life 1 start to finish, I will totally encourage you. Play Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, back to back. It is an incredible history lesson in FPS games, but then also 2 beautifully designed games that do stand up really well. When we talk about Half-Life 1, a lot of times people ask, should I play Black Mesa or the original? I prefer the original, just from the standpoint of the movement tech, the movement speed, the just aesthetics of it all. There's something about playing the original that I think is kind of important, but also Black Mesa is fantastic. It's the fan-made reimagining of Half-Life 1 done in the Source engine, and it is very faithful in many ways. The final segment of the game took a while to complete, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I've got a video I'll leave linked below if you want to learn more about Black Mesa. Both are awesome. Both are worth playing, in my opinion, but you play Half-Life 1 and then go into Half-Life 2, you can see why this game has a 96 on Metacritic. The gameplay is so good. Valve hands you a near perfect sandbox and then gives you opportunities to play out encounters in basically any way that you want to. On top of it, the Source engine. This was the debut, okay, of the Source engine. And physics, realistic, incredible physics like this, were not in games before. And Valve's like, here's a gravity gun. You don't even need to use weapons. You can pick up anything basically in the environment and use it however you like. And it's pretty mind-blowing to me seeing this and then going, really no other modern game has been able to duplicate physics quite like this or integrate it into the gameplay. Sure, many games did physics-based puzzles after Half-Life 2, but never to the degree that Half-Life 2 was able to do so. On top of these things, the technology. This game still looks good 20 years later. A 20-year-old engine, and it still looks nice. Now, I'm a huge fan of Source games. I think the Source engine aesthetic is really unique and does age gracefully, which does help things. But it's pretty amazing when you go through the experience, the journey of this game, to realize you could be playing this in another 10 years and it will still hold up, because the entire experience, from the visuals, the sound design, the gameplay, the pacing, they are all on point, which is what puts Half-Life 2 in its own stratosphere, its own universe. I've not touched Counter-Strike 2. I haven't really played around with the new Source engine, but man, I am so hopeful that we're going to see something new Half-Life related. I've never gotten to try Half-Life Alyx. I don't have a VR headset, maybe down the road someday, but there's something about this era. I mean, we got Halo 2 in 2004 and Half-Life 2. Why were so many incredible FPS games on the single player side far and away better than most of the stuff we've gotten over the last decade, over the last 15 years? And I think it comes down to the fact that Valve aimed for something that had never been done before, but ultimately put player experience first. How do we make the best, the coolest, the most immersive yet very fun game that we can? There is the RTX Remix project happening for Half-Life 2, and I cannot wait for when this project is going to be available to play. It looks absolutely amazing. It brings in ray tracing and enhanced textures, and I am so pumped to experience this when it releases. And so here I am, 20 years later, still wondering, how did Half-Life 2 do it? How is it so good? And after finishing it yet again, all I can think about is going into episode 1 and episode 2. I love it. It's so good, but I don't know exactly why. It totally lands itself in that special kind of magical territory of games. And what I really appreciate deeply, the game never holds your hand. Through clever level design, they teach you how to play while you're playing. There's 2 times in the game that they use a tutorial or text on screen to communicate what to do. Everything else you figure out and you problem solve, and it puts you in the driver's seat. I want to know if you've played through Half-Life 2 before. Number 1, what was the story like the first time you played it? And number 2, if you love it, how do they do what they do? How were they able to make something that is such a step above, that has aged so well? I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking, subscribing. I hope you all have a great start to the week, and I will see you again on Wednesday.